Good evening, everyone. It's just about 6 o'clock. I am going to wait a couple of seconds here. I seem to have people getting on, so we will start in just a moment. Okay, I think we'll get started. Kathleen, can you hear me?
I can, Meredith.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. I know it was kind of short notice that we planned this event, and it's been a little crazy the last month. So want to thank everybody for being here. And most importantly, I want to thank you all for volunteering to be on one of our boards and commissions, because it's a big job and you guys do a lot of work for us that we really appreciate. And as a volunteer, sometimes I know it's hard to commit to things like this outside your more normal schedule. So I really appreciate you being here this evening. I'm going to start with just a short, turn it over shortly to our new city manager, Jeff Durbin, to give you all a few welcoming comments.
Thank you, Meredith. Hi there, Jeff Durbin. I think I'm part of the reason why it's been hectic for Meredith around here for the last month. My official first day was December 31st, and this has been an onboarding like no other. And as you know, our meeting schedules have changed in January because our priorities have changed. But I have to say how proud I am to be a part of this team and working with the great professionals that serve this community. It's been just remarkable to see the work everybody's been doing. And I say that because you're joining this team, for those of you that are new. I'm assuming a lot of you haven't served as a public official before. And the reason to have orientations like these is because it is a little bit different being in the role. It's not private sector. We have a lot of rules that we have to follow that may seem a little bit odd at first, but they're really important. They're part of process, and process in our world is very important. Public meetings, open records, all those type of things that you're going to hear quite a bit about tonight. So I look forward to meeting all of you in person. I hope to do that soon. I had hoped to have met you all by now, but we'll get there. And by, I guess, some closing thoughts, I've been doing this kind of work for over 27 years, and I love what I do. And the reason I love what I do is I get to make a difference every day. And so I hope that you find that same joy and reward in contributing to this community in the same way. This is a great community, and the work you do, as Meredith said, is really important. So thank you. And if you ever need anything from your staff members, we're here to support you. Feel free to reach out, and look forward to seeing you around and meeting you in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I will just go ahead and start here. You are all now part of our lovely community of board and commission members, of which we have these 14 boards. They cover a wide variety of topics, from parks to revitalization to libraries to planning and zoning. So first thing, I'm going to actually have each board and commission has a staff liaison. So the staff liaisons are each going to introduce themselves for you and give you a little kind of a high level overview of what their board does. So we're going to go through the list in this order. So first up is Board of Adjustment, and I think Ellie Hassan is going to take that one.
Yep, that's correct.
So I'm Ellie Hatson. I'm the planner with the City of Lewisville's Building and Planning Safety Department, and I oversee the Board of Adjustment. And the main role that the Board of Adjustment has is they hear and decide variances, mostly for residential properties. And they also do some work sometimes with floodplain development permits, as well as appeals of administrative zoning decisions and floodplain determinations.
Thank you, Ellie. Lisa, would you be kind enough to cover the Building Code Board of Appeals, because I don't see Chad on this evening?
Excuse me, sure. Hi, Lisa Ritchie. I'm in the Planning and Building Safety Department. The Building Code Board of Appeals is a board that is impaneled to review a couple roles. Review updates to our building codes that we make on a routine basis, and then also hear appeals for a decision that is made by our chief building official. So that's primarily the role of this board.
Thank you, Lisa. Erica Schmidt is our staff liaison for the Cultural Council.
Hi, the Cultural Council is an advisory board that promotes arts and culture within the city. This can include supporting local artists through the yearly arts grants, to programming music and cultural events, and advocating for and supporting the arts. They also advise the city in the selection of public art to add to the permanent collections.
Thank you, Erica. Kim Bauer is our staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yep. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Bauer. I'm the Historic Preservation Planner for the city. So I'm also in the planning department, and I oversee the Historic Preservation Commission. We do a couple things. We oversee the Historic Preservation Fund. So we utilize some of those funds that come in through kind of the tax dollars for grants and other things like that. And then we also oversee the landmark program. So that's kind of the historic structures that get plaqued you might see throughout the city. And then we look at other things for just kind of generally older homes, sometimes when they're being remodeled or rehabbed or things like that. So nice to meet all of you. Thanks, Meredith.
Next, we have Bridget Bacon, who is with the Historical Commission. And I don't know why we have two boards that couldn't have more. It would have been better if we named them something slightly not so common, but Bridget, you're next.
Great. Hi. I'm Bridget Bacon, the Museum Services Supervisor, and our work is done in the Department of Library and Museum Services. Other boards in the same department are the Library Board of Trustees and the Cultural Council, but actually we have a lot to do with the Historic Preservation Commission, as you were mentioning, Meredith, that we have similar names and we do collaborate even though they kind of come out of different departments. So the Historical Commission is an advisory board to the City of Lewisville for things having to do with Lewisville history. This mainly manifests as help with the museum in terms of approving museum policies, approving donations that come to the museum. So most of the work has to do with the museum, but there are some things that go beyond the museum having to do with Lewisville history, such as reviewing and approving historical signage around town. You may see interpretive signs around town that the commission was involved with. And also the Historical Commission recognizes the contributions of individuals through the award of a Pioneer Award every year. So thank you and welcome everybody.
Next is Kristen Bodine with the Library Board of Trustees.
Was muted. All right. Hi, I'm Kristen Bodine. I'm the acting director at the Lewisville Library, and our board helps advise us on library matters, such as our strategic plan and advocating for resources in the community and just being a library advocate. So welcome, everyone. We're excited to work with you.
Thank you, Kristen. Jenny Klein is the staff liaison to the Local Licensing Authority.
Good evening, everybody. The Local Licensing Authority is responsible for approving all new liquor and marijuana licenses within the city, as well as those entities renewing their liquor or marijuana license. They also review and approve special event liquor licenses, and they also do hearings if an entity is found to have broken the rules.
So thanks, welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. Next is Ember Brignell, who is the Open Space Superintendent.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you this evening. I am the staff liaison for the Open Space Advisory Board, and our primary role is related to natural resource management, restoration, preservation. The board also looks into open space acquisition of acquiring new lands. We do environmental education and volunteer programming, and this board advises City Council and staff on all of those open space related issues and trail issues.
Thank you, Ember. Dean Johnson is the Park Superintendent.
Hello, I'm Dean Johnson, Park Superintendent. The Parks and Public Landscaping Advisory Board advises staff and City Council in a nutshell on anything with management, maintenance practices on our park properties. Park properties aren't just the bluegrass parks, it's also our medians, our cemetery, and some native areas out there. I wanted to welcome John, Patricia, and Shannon as our new members. We're going to be hitting the ground running tomorrow is our meeting. And one of my favorite things we're going to start off with is starting to review our capital project wish list, which is a really great way to be involved. So what we're going to be working on tomorrow is putting together a list of project ideas, suggestions for City Council to approve. So welcome.
Lisa, I think we're back to you for Planning Commission.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to introduce Elizabeth K. Marchetti for those of you on Planning Commission. Elizabeth is our new senior planner here on staff. And so you'll be working with her eventually as we transition roles here. But generally, within the Planning Commission, the primary role is to advise City Council on any land use application that comes through that doesn't have administrative staff authority for review and approval in our subdivision regulations and our land use regulations for zoning. So primarily this comes in the form of commercial development and redevelopment, and then new subdivisions, which happen from time to time. And Planning Commission doesn't have final authority on any of our land use applications. They serve in an advisory capacity for City Council. And additionally, one of the primary roles of our Planning Commission is to work and support our comprehensive plan. And so while our 2022 work plan is still up in the air, we had planned on doing the comprehensive plan update for this year. So we'll have to understand more about the impacts for Marshall Fire on that planning effort.
Thank you, Lisa. Kathy Martin does the Recreation Advisory Board.
Hi, everybody. Kathy Martin, and I am the staff liaison for the Recreation and Golf Advisory Board. This board was formed in 2017. It was kind of on the heels of the golf course coming back after the floods, and also the beginning of the recreation center bond for an expansion of the recreation and senior center. And so the Recreation and Golf Advisory Board advises staff and council on operation and capital projects, the Recreation and Senior Center, the Coal Creek Golf Course, and any other rec amenities. So I just have one new member joining the board this year. Thank you.
Megan Pierce is our Economic Vitality Director, and she handles the Revitalization Commission.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So the Lewisville Revitalization Commission is the city's urban renewal authority. So it has a bit of a different form and structure than some of the other commissions here tonight. In conjunction with the city, the commission is responsible for implementing the Highway 42 Urban Renewal Plan. This generally covers the area of downtown, Highway 42 and South Boulder Road, and they focus on stimulating growth and reinvestment. The LRC has its own budget, and through tax increment financing provides funding for public-private partnerships, as well as capital projects in the urban renewal area.
Very sad to say that Katie Baum is leaving us, but she currently is our Sustainability Board staff liaisons for at least the next, week or two. So
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. I'm Katie Baum. I am the current sustainability coordinator with the City of Lewisville and staff liaison to the Sustainability Advisory Board. Welcome, Lev and Megan, to LSAB. We are, not a decision-making board. We are an advisory board to City Council on sustainability practices as well as resource conservation. This is quite the umbrella sustainability is. So we have a lot of different areas that we kind of advise on and work on. And a big piece of LSAP as well is helping to make sure the Lewisville Sustainability Action Plan continues to move forward at a clip. My supervisor, Emily Hogan, will be filling the staff liaison role until we get my position filled. But up till then, you'll be stuck with me up till February 18th. So thank you.
And last but not least is our Youth Advisory Board and Mandy Pereira.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Mandy Pereira, and I'm the Recreation Liaison for the Youth Advisory Board. And also with me is Jessica Schwartz, and she is the Library Liaison. This board was created in 2002 to provide a voice for the youth in the community. They run a little bit different than a lot of our other boards, as they go September through May, more of a school year term, and they volunteer frequently. They do an annual project and advise as needed for issues pertaining to youth.
Thank you, everybody. So you've kind of seen the depth and breadth of what all our boards do. As most people mentioned, our boards are advisory in character. There are a couple of boards that are required, there are 5 actually, that are required in the city charter that we are not allowed to get rid of, or council couldn't get rid of unless they wanted to go to a vote of the people. Every other board we have is created by a charter, by ordinance or resolution, sometimes a combination thereof, and that ordinance and resolution defines the scope of work of the board. There are a couple of boards, that do have final decision-making authority. They are the Building Code Board of Appeals, like Lisa was mentioning, if they make a decision based, if they revoke someone's contractor's license or make a decision based on a decision made by our chief building official, those would be appealed to district court, not to our city council. Also the local licensing authority, should they make a decision that a licensee does not like, that would be appealed to district court. So those 2 boards do have final decision-making authority, but pretty much every other board we have is advisory in character to city council. Some of our boards are quasi-judicial. You'll hear that mentioned quite a bit. Those boards deal with generally personal property rights, so either land use property or actually a liquor license property. Those boards follow very specific quasi-judicial procedure to make sure that applicants have get due process. If you've been appointed to one of those boards, you'll get special training on that from your liaison and from the city attorney's office. So just so you have a kind of an overview of what everybody does and what everything, how it all kind of fits together. That's the big picture. Next, I'm going to introduce Kathleen Kelly. She's our city attorney, and she's going to give you a little information about role discipline.
Thank you, Meredith. Yes, I'm going to take the next few slides because lack of role discipline can result in liability to the city or to yourself personally, or both. So it's a really important area for everyone to understand. Those introductions were great. And as you can tell, each of the boards and commissions within the city has a specific role. And as Meredith mentioned, that role can be found in the documents that created the board or commission, whether it's the charter, the ordinance, or the resolution. So it's important for all of you to understand what is your role and how to stay within the confines of your role. And welcome to those of you who are new to serving on an appointed body in the city. As Meredith said, we do very much appreciate your contribution. But there's something important that you need to think about now that you are an appointed official of the city, and that is that your role has changed. You've gone from a citizen to an official, and with that comes some responsibilities. now that you're an appointed leader of the city, it's important for you to always be thinking through questions and issues and matters that come before your board with the lens of what is the right way to proceed for the city? What is the right decision for the city? So take time, speak with your liaison, review the documents that you're provided that explain your particular board and your role on that board so that you truly understand how your position in the city's appointed bodies can best help the city council. But also, if you don't understand the role, then it can create a lot of problems, waste resources, it can create confusion or controversy, both within the city and within the community. And those types of situations really sow distrust of the government. And we want to avoid that, of course, always. Liability for yourself and for the city. And you just reduce the effectiveness of both you and the work that you do for the city and the work that you do on your board. So remember that as an individual appointed official, you don't have any authority to take any action on your own. It's only working with your board at public meetings that you can make any decisions or put any materials or make any official statements on behalf of the city. That has to all come from duly held meetings of your board, and they have to relate to matters that are within your board's responsibilities. So one important thing is under Colorado law, each of you as appointed officials have protection from liability for work that you do that is within the scope of your role as an appointed board member. But you have to respect the limitations of your role and make sure that you're always acting within your role, or you can lose that protection from liability. And the city's liability coverage through its insurance carrier depends upon you acting within your scope and role as an appointed board member. So I mentioned at the beginning that lack of role discipline can result in liability, and that can be personal liability to you. Lack of role discipline can also result in loss of the city's insurance coverage. So you could be faced with a liability claim and not have any coverage from the city to protect you. So it's really important to understand what to do and what not to do to make sure that you, as we have on the slide here, stay within your lane. And if we move to the next slide, Meredith has put together a great list of do's and don'ts to help you stay within your lane. All right, so I guess, let's start with the don'ts because, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, did you have something to add? You've got your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Kathleen, in my prior positions, we've had an understanding with our elected and appointed officials that if they have concerns about their roles or conflict of interest or anything like that, that they can contact you, the city attorney, to talk that through. Is that the same here?
Well, it is a little bit different in Lewisville. As we went through in the introductions, each of the boards and commissions has a city staff liaison. And so really communications come through the liaison to my office.
Yeah, specific to roles and all that, I totally agree. But in terms of, are you a resource for them if they have concerns about, when you mention liability and those type of things, that's what I'm thinking about, if they're getting out of their lanes.
Right. Again, we do try to funnel all of those communications through the staff liaison.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And I suppose if there's some reason why that would not work in a particular situation, then perhaps they could, contact you or someone on your staff to discuss the matter. The only thing I can think of is if the question has to do with the staff liaison and they don't feel comfortable asking that person, then there should be someone else. But typically we don't have appointed officials contact our office directly.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say too, they're always welcome to go through me if, for some reason you have a weird question and you're not sure liaison is unavailable or you can't get an answer you're looking for. People are always welcome to contact me.
Right. And certainly Meredith or the staff liaison will pull someone in from the city attorney's office. There are different lawyers in my firm who work directly with each of these boards. So it won't always be me. But, we do have a close working relationship with all of the staff liaisons. Okay, so let's just run through the don'ts so that we all understand them. As I mentioned, as an appointed official, you are a member of the board. So individually, you don't speak for the city. Your board has a specific role in a way that it provides its advice and expertise to usually the city council, and you should only work within that role. So don't speak on behalf of the city, and also don't speak for your board unless you're specifically appointed to do so. And so this would mean that, you don't put out separate materials that, appear to be prepared on behalf of the city. All of that needs to come through your board and your city staff liaison. Don't post to social media on behalf of the city or your board. And it's really important to remember that your board, when it takes an action, even if you were in the minority and you don't agree with the action of the board, it is the action of the board. And so it creates a lot of confusion, and it can sow some discontent if you, after your board makes a recommendation or a decision, if you appear before council or you post to social media in a way that is contrary to the official action that your board has taken. Now, Meredith mentioned that some of the boards act in a quasi-judicial capacity or are involved in quasi-judicial processes of the city. And so there's some very specific limitations that apply to those types of boards and those types of actions. So if you're on one of those boards, we'll have a separate training to run through all of that. But the key takeaway is that you are not a spokesperson for your board unless your board appoints you to be so. So just keep that in mind, and always stick to the job description. We like to say the roles and responsibilities and the manner in which the city council has created the board to provide your expertise and recommendations to the council. So when you are speaking, we'll move over to the do's. Do clearly identify if you're speaking on behalf of yourself or on behalf of the board. Because, as I said in the beginning, that for those of you who are new, you have to recognize that you have shifted from being a private citizen to a member of an appointed body. Now, that doesn't mean that you have no voice as a private citizen any longer. It just means that if you are speaking as a private citizen, you need to make sure that you are expressing that, your comments are those of yourself and not of the board. If you receive any media inquiries on behalf of your board or pertaining to a matter that your board is working on, send those to your staff liaison. We do have city staff people who handle all of those. And also recognize the need for transparency and accountability. The city charter has some very specific requirements for meetings and transparency of public business. And, we also do have a separate training for all of our open government regulations, and each of you will be required to attend an open government training periodically. But the overarching takeaway from this is that the city of Lewisville has established a manner of governing that is very transparent. It provides more transparency than under the statutory open meetings laws. And if you ever have any questions about the transparency provisions, you can, review the charter, or you can talk to your liaison to understand those better. And always understand that we're not just concerned about adhering to the letter of the charter, of our ordinances, of the documents that create each of your boards, but we want to make sure that nobody in the public has the perception that anyone is violating any of those provisions, because we all operate with the public's trust, and that's something very important to the work that we do. And so always think about not just, is what I'm about to do prohibited, but also, how does this look? Would somebody think that this is wrong for me as an appointed board member to be doing or saying what you're about to say or do? So always view things through that lens of perception as well. And again, if you have specific questions, please do talk to your council liaison. And for those of you on quasi-judicial boards, you will be seeing me or a member of my firm very soon for your training.
Thank you, Kathleen. So you've now had a chance to see all the staff liaisons. I want to say this is a picture of what it kind of is like to be a staff liaison. You're juggling a lot of balls. So, but your staff liaison has a number of functions that they do for you as a staff liaison. They advise you on how city processes work or the history of a project. They coordinate your meetings in your packet to make sure we meet all of our rules. They facilitate your meetings and make sure everyone gets heard. They facilitate information coming from council to you, from you back to council. They want to make sure that regulations are all being met, so they act as a regulator. And for some of them, they're an administrator. They make sure signatures are gotten, that licenses are given out, that contractors' licenses are reviewed properly, or whatever it is. So they have a lot of duties that they have to take care of. So one thing we ask you to remember is that your staff liaison is busy and they will always get back to you, but it may not be in the 5 minutes right after you've asked them a question by email. So please give them a little grace in that respect. I would say particularly in the last few weeks, some of our staff members are doing a lot of work that has nothing to do with your board right now. They seem to be doing a lot of fireworks. So keep that in mind. We also ask that you don't ask for information or ask for something outside of the normal process. I'm going to be on vacation, kind of get my packet a week early. Probably not. The packet's not going to be done the week early because of all the other work people have to do. So your liaisons are there to help you, and they will help you, and they'll answer your questions, but they're busy folks, so please give them a little bit of grace when it comes to asking for information from them. So we do, as Kathleen noted, have some pretty strict rules regarding open government and transparency. That first quote there is from our home world charter that says it's the policy of the city that activities of the government should be conducted to the public to the greatest extent feasible in order to assure public participation and enhance public accountability. So we do take that very seriously. Also, the Colorado Opens Meeting Law states it's declared to be a matter of statewide concern and the policy of the state that the formation of public policy is public business and may not be conducted in secret. So that seems simple enough, but it basically means there's a lot of rules we have to follow, and we are pretty strict about following all of those rules. So it is imperative we meet the intent of those rules, not just the letter of the law. And one thing I'd ask you to keep in mind is that now you're kind of a government insider, you have a little more information, you kind of know how things work. Most of our residents don't have that information, and they're simply trying to figure it out as they go along. So our job as staff and your job as a board member is to make things easy to understand. So we try and do that for everyone in all of our meetings. And the other thing to keep in mind is we really do encourage public participation in all aspects of policymaking. So whether that's reading the emails you get from the public related to your item or making sure people get to speak at your meeting, those are very important that we have public participation. So here's just a little more of the specific details about open government. Keep in mind that legal rules are interpreted by the courts in favor of openness. It should never seem like a person comes into a meeting and you've already made a decision. That decision should be made in a public meeting, so keep that in mind. We have a lot of rules on notices, handling of agendas, permissible items. I'm going to go over just some important ones here. I know they do seem like it's a real pain sometimes that they have to be followed, but they really do. A meeting technically is any time 3 or more of you are together in a room. So if 3 of you want to meet to discuss public business, it has to be posted as a meeting. That means 72 hours in advance. It has to be open to the public, whether it's on Zoom or say in a public building, but you can't just decide the 3 of you are going to meet to discuss board business tomorrow night in your friend's house. So just keep that in mind. Meetings must occur in public buildings or public facilities. At this point, all of our meetings are happening on Zoom, so that is easier, but when we get back to in person, that's something to keep in mind. Agendas must be specific, and you can't have a discussion of an item that is not on your agenda. You can have discussion to say we're going to talk about this later, but you can't have substantive discussion on an item that's not on your agenda. Meeting packets must be posted in advance of the meeting. It's a charter requirement for us. We post everything the week prior to your meeting so people have the weekend to read them. Minutes must be taken and staff must be in attendance. So I know that's kind of annoying, but those are the rules we follow. And we want it to be consistent across all of our boards as well, so that all of our public knows whether they're going to a cultural council meeting, a planning commission meeting, or a licensing authority meeting, that the basic rules are all going to be the same and everyone's going to follow them. A little bit on email. So email should never replace what's happening in a meeting. Like I said, no one should feel like you've made a decision via email and they come to the meeting and it's just kind of a checkbox. Oh yeah, we already decided that by email. That is not public. So a few do's and don'ts here is you're welcome to have one-on-one conversations via email. That's great. You can correspond with your staff via email, and you can copy other board members on informational items. Something like, oh, here's an article I saw related to open space. You could send that to the open space board members, but you should not have a reply all. Nobody should reply all and be like, oh, let's have a big conversation about this via email. You also shouldn't have serial email conversations. So board member A talks to board member B, who talks to board member C, who gets back to board member A. That would be considered a serial meeting. So don't let email take place of the conversation that should happen in your regular meetings. So I kind of went over some of those don'ts there already. Don't make it substitute for official action. Don't reply all. Don't send emails with mixed and public-private communication. Your emails are subject to the Colorado Open Records Act. I can't say it's happened very often, but someone could ask for all emails on a board topic, in which case I'd have to ask you for all of your emails, or we'd have to pull them if they're off the city server. So we would really encourage you not to put anything in email mixing public and private conversation, and don't put anything in email you don't want to read in a newspaper. Just generally better for everybody all around. I hate to say this too, this also now applies to texting. We've been known to get a few requests for texts lately. Still not entirely sure how that works, but be careful when you should not allow your text to take place of what should be happening in a public meeting. So, and here's the do's and don'ts for in your meeting. So again, this is kind of overview of what is in our charter. You have to have a specific agenda. You have to meet in a public building. You have to provide copies of all your meeting materials to the public. That is a charter requirement. Should someone come to your meeting and say, I couldn't find your packet, you have to help them find it. Generally now, most people find everything on the website. That's where we post everything. That's great. On occasion, we'll get someone who says, I can't find something. Your staff liaison should be able to help them find it. But it is a requirement that we make sure everybody has access to the same information you have. You have to allow time for public comment in your meetings. The one thing you can do is limit the time. So we generally limit public comments per person to 3 minutes, but they are allowed to take their 3 minutes. Every board has an item on their agenda for someone to speak to items not on the agenda. And should someone want to, they can stand up and speak for 3 minutes about the color of the sky is actually orange, not blue. It is what it is. It's a public meeting. They're allowed to do that. So please allow everyone their 3 minutes to speak. Please recognize the need for transparency during your meetings. And when I say please make sure everyone who wants to speak speaks, that doesn't just include the public. If you have a board member who's shy, you have a board member who doesn't normally speak up, but you think they have something they want to offer to the conversation, I encourage your chair or everyone else on your board to make sure everyone in the board has a chance to speak and that no one is being kept from speaking. We already went over the email and phone.
You
We
do
already
have
went
one
over-
question, Meredith.
Okay, hold on just a second. Let me finish this slide. Make sure you're not having a parallel process for decision-making. So you're not using a poll, you're not talking to social media, you're not taking the email to make your decision. Decisions need to be made in the meeting itself. So thank you, Kathy. I will, let's see. Mark, you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask you, Meredith, something that's come up a few times for the Cultural Council is we, obviously we do events and art. In relation to the public meetings and the notification and the residents attending, if we want to do a field trip or a visit to something, do we have to issue a public notice for that? So if we all want to meet downtown, or 4 of us want to meet downtown to discuss the possibility of using a building, or, you know, like the example we did last year was whether we wanted to paint the concrete bollards that we use to block off the town. It wasn't really a decision-making meeting. It was, well, would it actually work? I mean, are those subject to the open meetings?
Yeah, Mark, that would be subject to open meetings. We do have some other boards who do site visits as well. Generally, what we do is we will post it as a public meeting and explain to someone from the public they're welcome to attend. For example, if it's a site visit where you're driving somewhere, we'll say the board will be visiting place X. Public is allowed to attend. You'll have to bring your own transportation. But the other caveat there is we will say you can take your site visit, you can look at what you need to look at, but then you need to return to a public building to have the discussion on what you want to decide. So a site visit would be followed then either at your next meeting, or you could do a meeting right after your site visit with a public meeting where you have the conversation. So you shouldn't be having the decision making on site outside or looking at what you're looking at. You need to reconvene for an actual technical meeting to do that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, you know, the real problem with, you know, for things like that is just, you know, it just delays everything. So if we're just going to go and look at, for example, one of the underpasses and decide, you know, whether it would be appropriate to put art there, we don't have to make the decision. We would just be advising the, you know, the Cultural Council at the next meeting. But the question is, how do we actually go to the underpass, look at it and say this works? Or do we just say, hey, if each of the individual Cultural Council members could go to the underpass and we'll reconvene at the next meeting and decide whether, you know, this is something we want to paint?
Yeah, I would say in that case, particularly for the Cultural Council, if you wanted to go visit individually, that would be fine. You could also assign a committee of 2 that's less than 3 to go and visit and take pictures and bring them back to the full commission. So those would be options that you could do. But the decision about the board's going to say yay or nay, we think this is a great underpass to recommend to council to paint, that decision should be made in the public meeting.
Yes, and it would. It was just really a question of how we, you know, how we actually go and see it, whether it's okay to just agree by email that we're all going to go look and wander around and go, well, you can't paint on that, but that might work, you know, and then meet back at the next scheduled Cultural Council and actually have a decision which says, we looked at the area and we think that, you know, it would be good to, you know, look for a grant applicant to paint this part rather than having made the decision already.
Yeah, I think that would work as long as you're transparent that you've all been to the site, or 2 of you went to the site, or just somewhat how you can explain to the public how you went to view it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
So Meredith, the only thing I would add to that is that the decision for each of the members to go view the underpass in this example, that really should be made as part of the public meeting as well. I would not recommend that that decision be made by email among the members. So that's the only thing I would change in that scenario.
And I would say, for like, if something came up between meetings and Erica said, oh, we have an option now to discuss this at our next meeting, Erica could send you all an email into the, as a group and say, we're going to be discussing this the next meeting if you want to go visit it individually. But that should stem from Erica, and it should be an invitation to everybody.
Yep,
okay.
That sounds good.
Meetings are fun. I promise you, the meetings are more that you have with your group are way more fun than this meeting we're having here tonight. The rules aren't nearly as fun as everything else. I'm going to briefly go over how you get kicked off a board. So it hasn't happened. We don't do this regularly, but I want you all to be aware of the things you could do that could get you removed from a board. I have highlighted here the one thing in red that is kind of the one thing we've ever had an issue with, which is missing more than 25% of the regular meetings is cause for removal. We don't have an unexcused ability to do that on meetings right now. So you can't say, I'm not going to be there and it be an excused absence. That said, we are meeting via Zoom right now for everything. So whether you're here or in Timbuktu, as long as you have internet connection, for at least until we figure out our next steps after COVID, you can attend your meetings via Zoom, whether you're in the city or not. A couple of random things that kind of come up more recently because of the fire, you do have to be a resident to serve on a board or commission. Currently, we have about, I think, 8 or 10 residents or members of our boards who have been displaced by the fire, and some are not living in Lewisville. As long as they still own their property in town and are intending to return, you are considered a resident and you can continue to serve on your board. So we do appreciate all of you who have been so unfortunate to lose your homes that you're still taking the time to serve on the boards. It means a lot to us. So thank you for that. But you can see on there some of the ways you could be removed. Should something like this happen, a complaint is made to the city manager. He or his designee investigates. If they find there's reason for removal, they can recommend to council you be removed. At which case you would come to a council meeting and you would have the option to explain what happened and why you shouldn't be removed. But I want to reiterate, we've never had to do this. So I don't want it to sound like we remove people from boards all the time. Generally, most of our board members are great and they follow all the rules, and we appreciate all the work everybody's done. So let's see, your staff member is going to do a specific onboarding process for you related to your board. So they'll go over your meeting date and times, your work plans. For those of you on quasi-judicial boards, they'll go over that process with you, discuss the organization of the board. And also some of you work with more than one staff member, particularly in the planning department. You may have on the planning commission, for example, multiple staff members present to your board. So they'll make sure you know who's who and what's what in that department. So that is the long and short of it all. I'm happy to take any questions from anybody, or if there's a topic we haven't covered that someone wants some more information about. I see we have here Mr. Bronice from the Planning Commission. Steve, you should be unmuted. And yet we're not hearing you, Steve. No, we're not getting your microphone doesn't seem to be working. If you want to drop an email to me or Lisa, we could ask your question, but I'm sorry, we can't hear you. So anybody else have any questions or comments for us? All right, hold on. I've been told Steve is on twice. I'm going to try and find you. Let's see, Steve, if this one works for you. So Steve, your other microphone is not unmuted. If you want to check that one.
Hey, hi Meredith. So Steve texted me quickly just to confirm site visits for the Planning Commission. I think our current, excuse me, current guidance is that we are generally not doing site visits for land use applications. I'm not sure if you or Kathleen want to weigh in more on that.
I think that is correct, but I'll let Kathleen answer that.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. Thank you. Yes, site visits are problematic in the quasi-judicial process because the law requires that a board sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity make its decision on the facts presented at the record developed at the public hearing before the board. And from a practical standpoint, it's just very difficult to structure a site visit in a way that preserves that quasi-judicial process. I believe that the city has on occasion done these in the past, but my recommendation is that information that can be gained from a site visit is usually information that can be brought to the board in some other manner, such as photographs or videos, and then it's part of the record. And that becomes important if the opinion or the decision of the board or commission is challenged, because then you have that evidence in the record and we can point to it in support of your decision before the court that's reviewing your decision. So yes, my understanding as well is that the planning staff is not scheduling site visits on quasi-judicial applications at this time.
And the other thing I'll mention there is that like a land use case that is appealed or a liquor license case that's appealed and goes to district court, the court is not going to be looking at your decision. They're going to be looking at if due process was served. So in those cases, for those of you that are quasi-judicial, it's important you stick to the quasi-judicial process so that everybody gets their due process. And should something go sideways and we end up in court, we have all of our ducks in a row. We know we've done the process correctly.
Thanks, Meredith. And I think for confirmation tonight, that would include the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Commission, and Board of Adjustment would be the boards within the planning department that generally this recommendation is for.
Does anybody else have any questions? Don't see any. I'm just going to reiterate again, we really appreciate everybody's willingness to serve on these boards and commissions. It's fun. You meet really interesting people. You learn lots of interesting things you never know you'd be interested in. But it is a lot of work, and we know it's a time commitment for you guys to take time out of your lives to come do this for us. So we really do appreciate it. All of your staff liaisons are here and willing to help, answer questions, see what you need. Don't hesitate to reach out to anybody if you have more questions. And if you can't get your staff liaison, you're certainly welcome to contact me directly. And with that, I will see if Jeff has any closing comments.
This was great. Thanks, Meredith.
All right, everybody have a great evening and stay warm in that balmy 6-degree weather we have out there. So you guys have a great evening and appreciate you staying, Chris, for sticking through this evening with your time. Thanks a lot.